You know that moment when you look around and everything seems to crumble, when doors close one after another, when God's silence seems louder than any prayer, when even breathing hurts. It's exactly there, in that place no one wants to be, that something extraordinary can happen. Today, we're going to talk about hope in God when all seems lost. And I'm not going to give you ready-made answers or magic formulas. I'm going to show you something that can completely change the way you see your darkest days, because there's a truth that few discover. Sometimes it's precisely when we reach the end of ourselves that God begins to work in a way we never imagined. Stay with me until the end, because I'm going to share a biblical revelation that might be exactly what your heart needs to hear today. Something that will make you see your struggles in a new light. Have you ever experienced that heavy silence that comes before the emotional storm? That moment when you wake up and for a few seconds you don't yet remember the weight you're carrying, until reality knocks on the door of your heart and you think, how am I going to go on? It's a different kind of pain. It's not the kind that screams, that cries out loud. It's the kind that leaves you paralyzed, staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, asking questions that seem to have no answer. Why is this happening to me? Where did I go wrong? Does God really care? And the truth is that this silence can be deafening, because when hope in God, it seems so distant when you've prayed so much and nothing has changed, when you've tried to be strong and can't take it anymore. The emptiness begins to whisper lies. You're alone. Nobody understands. It won't get better. But do you know what many people don't realize at this moment? Silence is not abandonment. Sometimes it's preparation, because God doesn't work on our timeline, nor in the way we expect. And when all seems lost, that's exactly where He is about to do something that our eyes cannot yet see. What do you do when you're in that place? When each day seems heavier than the last, when faith becomes a choice you have to make minute by minute. That's where the true journey of hope begins. Because hope amidst pain, it's not about feeling like everything is okay. It's about deciding to keep going even when it's not. What if I told you that this silence you feel isn't the end of the story, but the beginning of something that will completely transform how you perceive God's faithfulness? There's a pain we carry in our chest that no one sees, the kind you hide behind a smile, disguise in quick conversations, sweep under the rug because it seems like no one would really understand. And deep down, you feel like you're screaming in an empty room. Do you know anyone who understands this feeling well? Job. Imagine the scene. A man who had everything, family, health, wealth, respect, and suddenly in the blink of an eye, he lost absolutely everything. His children died, his riches vanished, his body became covered in painful sores, and to top it all off, even his closest friends began to accuse him, saying he must have done something terribly wrong to deserve so much suffering. There, sitting in the ashes, scraping his wounds with a piece of broken pottery, Job faced the worst pain of all, the loneliness of not being understood. He cried out for answers, questioned God, wept in his anguish, and for a long time, there was only silence, that silence that corrodes the soul, the one that makes you wonder if anyone, anywhere cares about what you're going through. But here's the detail that changes everything. God was watching. Every tear, every groan, every sleepless night, nothing went unnoticed. And even when Job didn't understand, even when his friends judged him wrongly, even when everything seemed to conspire against him, God had a purpose that would only be revealed in due time. Because trusting God in pain, it doesn't mean having all the answers. It means believing that He does. Perhaps you are in a similar valley right now, carrying a burden that no one sees, fighting battles that no one knows about. And the temptation is to think you are alone in this, but the biblical truth is this: hope for those who are suffering. It comes from the God who not only sees your pain, but enters into it with you. He is not a distant God, watching from afar. He is Emmanuel, God with us. What if God's comfort in times of difficulty is precisely this: the silent certainty that you were never truly alone, even when everything seemed to indicate otherwise. There comes a point in every believer's journey when you hit rock bottom and realize something surprising. There's nothing left. There are no more plans, no more strength, no more human solutions. And then you look up and think, all I have left is to believe. It's strange, but it's precisely at this point that faith ceases to be theory and becomes reality. Because when you have money, you trust in money. When you have health, you trust in health. When you have people, you trust in people. But when all of that disappears, that's when you discover what you truly believe in. Faith when there seems to be no way out. This is not spiritual romanticism. It is a raw, almost desperate decision to continue believing against all evidence. It's like that father who brought his demon-possessed son to Jesus and said, "I believe, Lord. Help my unbelief." He was being brutally honest. His faith was hanging by a thread, but it was the only thread he had. And do you know what Jesus did? He didn't rebuke him for his doubt. He didn't demand perfect, unwavering faith. He simply honored that little bit of faith that remained and performed the miracle. Because God isn't looking for giants of faith. He's looking for hearts willing to trust, even when trembling. Faith in times of crisis. That's it. It's not the absence of fear, but the presence of a choice. The choice to say, even if he slays me, yet will I trust in him, as Job said. The choice to declare faith in difficult times, not because you feel it, but because you decide to. And there is power in that. There is power in a faith that doesn't depend on circumstances, that doesn't need to see to believe, that remains standing when everything around it is crumbling. Could it be that the faith that truly transforms is the one that is born precisely when everything else has already died? Here's one of the hardest things about the Christian journey. God doesn't always explain why. He doesn't owe you an explanation. And that's unsettling, isn't it? Because we want to understand. We want it to make sense. We want to see the logic behind the suffering. But sometimes, God simply asks you to trust. Trusting in God, even without answers is one of the greatest tests of spiritual maturity. It's easy to trust when you understand the plan. It's easy to have faith when everything is falling into place. But what about when it makes no sense at all? What about when you pray and it seems like your prayers hit the ceiling and bounce back? What about when you look for signs and only find silence? That's where you learn what it really means. Trust in God during difficult times. It is not a trust based on logic or immediate results. It is a trust anchored in who God is, not in what He is doing. It is saying, I don't understand what you are doing, but I know your character, and that is enough for me. Imagine Abraham climbing the mountain with Isaac. That boy was God's promise, the son awaited for decades, the heir through whom all nations would be blessed. And God asked Abraham to sacrifice him. It made no sense at all. It was contradictory, painful, impossible to reconcile with everything God had promised. But Abraham went. Because Christian hope, it's not based on understanding, it's based on relationship. And look, before we continue, can I ask you a favor? If this message is touching your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Because the more people who share this hope, the more lives will be reached. And I want this message to reach exactly where God wants it to reach. Agreed. Going back, what sustains you when there are no clear answers? What keeps you standing when God seems silent? It's the memory of who He once was in your life. It's the promises of the Word that you choose to believe, even when your feelings scream otherwise. It's the certainty that He hasn't changed, even if your circumstances have changed. What if the question isn't, why is this happening, but rather, who is with me while this is happening? There is a huge difference between optimism and hope. Optimism says, everything will be all right. Hope says, I don't know how it will end, but God is in control. Optimism depends on circumstances. Hope survives despite them. And when you're in the valley, it's not optimism you need that hope that sustains the soul. The kind of hope that doesn't crumble when things continue to be bad, that doesn't give up when deadlines pass, that doesn't fade when the night seems endless. That hope is supernatural. It doesn't come from you. Do you know where it comes from? It comes from the Holy Spirit working within you. Romans 5:5 says that hope does not disappoint us, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. It is God sustaining you when you cannot sustain yourself alone. It is divine grace carrying you in moments when you can barely drag your feet. And here's the beautiful mystery. Hope, that comes from faith. It's not something you manufacture. There's no point in pretending, no point in trying to convince yourself. It's a gift, a fruit of the Spirit, something that springs up within you when you open yourself to God's presence, even, or especially, in your darkest moments. Have you ever experienced that moment when you're completely exhausted, but suddenly feel a strange peace invading your chest? That peace that doesn't make sense, considering everything that's happening. That's spiritual strength in God. It is He whispering to your spirit, I am here. You will succeed. I have not abandoned you. What would your life be like if you discovered that true hope doesn't depend on your own strength but on His? Here is a truth that can completely change your perspective. God is always working, even when you see absolutely nothing happening. While you are crying, He is moving pieces. While you are waiting, He is preparing. While you are silent, He is orchestrating. God acts when all seems lost. This isn't just a pretty phrase, it's a spiritual reality. Think of Israel imprisoned in Egypt for 400 years, 4 centuries of slavery, suffering, and cries for help. It seemed as if God had forgotten, but He was working in the invisible realm. He was preparing Moses in the desert. He was hardening Pharaoh's heart. He was positioning everything for a liberation so powerful that it would be recounted for generations. The problem is that we live in linear time. We want results now, but God lives in eternity, and He sees the whole picture. He sees the beginning and the end at the same time. So when it seems like nothing is changing in your life, maybe it's because He is doing something much bigger than you can imagine. God never abandons. This isn't just theology, it's a promise. Deuteronomy 31:6 is clear. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Never. Not even on your worst days. Not even when you give up on yourself. Not even when it seems like the whole world has turned its back on you. And you know what's amazing? Sometimes the greatest transformations happen precisely during periods of silence. It's like a seed under the ground. You don't see anything growing, but down there a revolution is taking place. Roots deepening, life preparing to sprout. God takes care of you even and especially when you don't realize it. What if everything you're experiencing right now is just the prelude to something so big that your eyes aren't yet able to see it? There's a moment in Lazarus' story that fascinates me. Jesus already knew Lazarus was sick, but purposefully waited until he died. And not just recently, he waited until he had been dead for 4 days, already decomposing. It reached a point where, humanly speaking, it was too late. Everyone had already lost hope. But Jesus looked at that impossible situation and saw an opportunity for glory, because God transforms the impossible. Not to impress you, but to teach you who He truly is. He could have healed Lazarus before his death, but He chose to resurrect him afterward. Why? So that there would be no doubt that it was His work, not coincidence, not luck, not human effort. So when things in your life reach a point where you look and think, now it's really over, there's no way back, that might be exactly when God is about to do what only He can do. That closed door you lamented so much, maybe God needs it to stay tightly closed, so that when He opens another one, you'll know it was Him. Overcoming difficult times with faith. Sometimes it means waiting longer than you think is reasonable. It means continuing to believe when all logic tells you to give up. It means standing firm on the promise when the facts scream otherwise. And it's not easy, far from it. But that's where the miracle happens. Small signs begin to appear, an unexpected peace, a door that opens, the right word at the right time, a provision that appears out of nowhere. These are the first movements of the impossible, and you realize, wait a minute, something is changing here. It's not your imagination. It is. God brings hope in a concrete, tangible, real way. Could the impossible situation you're facing be an opportunity to witness God's power like never before? There is a kind of hope you've never had before, the kind that is born after pain. It's not the naive hope of someone who has never suffered. It's the mature hope of someone who has been through the fire and discovered that God is faithful even when everything falls apart. When God restores hope, He doesn't simply return things to the way they were before. He creates something new. He rebuilds you in a way that makes you stronger, deeper, more aware of His presence. It's like a broken bone that when it heals becomes stronger at the fracture point. God has this ability to take your broken pieces and create something more beautiful than the original. Isaiah 61:3 speaks of this. He came to give to those who mourn a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. Look at the exchange God makes. He doesn't ignore the ashes. He transforms them into a crown. He doesn't deny mourning. He replaces it with joy. He doesn't minimize depression. He clothes it with praise. This is their renewal of hope in God. It's not a superficial reform. It's a complete recreation, and you feel it in your spirit. That wound that hurt so much, it begins to heal. That bitterness that was deeply rooted, it begins to be uprooted. That fear that paralyzed you, it begins to lose its power, and at some point you realize, I am different. I am being healed. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, but each step in that process reveals more of God's character. Every small victory over despair is proof that hope in God, it's not wishful thinking. It's spiritual reality, transforming your physical, emotional, and mental reality. What if the hope you're receiving now is exactly the hope you'll use to help someone else in the future? There comes a point in the journey when you look back and realize pain didn't win. It tried. It roared loudly, made threats, pushed you to the limit, but it didn't win. And the reason is simple, because the faith you carry is stronger than any storm. This isn't the superficial faith of the beginning of the journey. It's not that gospel enthusiasm that sings beautifully but crumbles at the first problem. It's a faith in difficult times. It was tested in the fire and came out like refined gold. It is a faith that wept, that questioned, that wrestled with God, but that remained. And that is worth more than any untested faith. Peter went through this. Before denying Jesus 3 times, he was full of bravado. Even if everyone abandons you, I will never abandon you. But when the moment came, he failed miserably. And there, before the bonfire, hearing the rooster crow, Peter wept as he had never wept before. The pain of failure, the weight of self-disappointment, the shame of having betrayed the master he loved. But the story didn't end there. Jesus restored Peter, and that same man who denied became the rock upon which the church was built. Why? Because his faith, after being broken and rebuilt by God, was unshakable. He now knew it. Trusting God in pain, it wasn't about his strength, but about the grace of Christ. This is what happens to you too. The faith that survives the valley is a transformed faith. You are no longer the person who entered the desert. You came out different, more humble, more dependent on God, more compassionate towards those who suffer, and paradoxically, stronger. Because now your strength is not in yourself, it is in the one who sustained you when you had nothing. So say this with me: the pain may have been real, but the victory is even more real. And that victory has a name: Jesus Christ. And now, as we reach the end of this journey, I want you to stop for a moment and take a deep breath. Look back To all those moments when you swore you couldn't take it anymore. To all those nights when you thought it was the end. To all those situations where you saw no way out, and here you are, still standing, still breathing, still believing. How? Because God never abandons. Even when you didn't feel His presence, He was there. Even when you thought He had forgotten you, He was holding you. Even when everything crumbled, He was the firm ground beneath your feet. The truth I want you to take away from here is this: hope in God. It's not about your circumstances changing, although they can change, and often do. It's about you discovering that no matter what happens, you're not alone. You never have been. You never will be. Isaiah 43:2 says something powerful. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Notice that it doesn't say, if you pass through water and fire. It says, when, because difficulties will come. But the promise is not that you won't go through them. The promise is that you won't go through them alone. And for you who are listening to this now, in the midst of your personal valley, I want you to know what you are going through will pass. It may not pass today. It may not pass tomorrow, but it will pass. And when it does, you will look back and see God's footprints in every step of the way, including, and especially, the moments when you thought you were walking alone. Hope for those who are suffering, that's it. It's not a guarantee that the pain will end tomorrow, but the certainty that you won't face it alone today. And that certainty changes everything, because a God who is with you in the valley is infinitely more precious than a God who only appears on the mountaintop. So even when all seemed lost, God was there, and He is still here, now, at this very moment, with you. If this message touched your heart in any way, I want to invite you to do something. First, don't keep this hope to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that God hasn't given up on them. Leave a comment telling your story, how God sustained you when everything seemed lost, because your testimony could be exactly the push of faith someone needs today. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because every week there's new content to strengthen your walk with God, to remind you that you're not alone on this journey of faith. I want you to understand one thing. Trust in God during difficult times. It's not about pretending everything is okay. It's not about having answers for everything. It's about deciding day after day that even without understanding the plan, you know the planner. And He is good. He is faithful. He never fails. A Christian hope, it's not an optimistic fantasy. It's a firm anchor that holds you when the storm hits. It's the certainty that, as Romans 8:28 says, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, even in the things that hurt, even in the things we wouldn't choose. God is working, always. So I want to conclude with this message, which may be exactly what you need to hear today. Your tears were not wasted. Your suffering was not in vain. And this pain you carry, God will transform it into purpose. Because that's how He works. He takes what was meant to destroy you and uses it to rebuild you stronger, more compassionate, more like Jesus. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. It's not about you being strong. It's about Him being strong in you. And that, my friend, that changes absolutely everything. May God's hope sustain you today, tomorrow, and always. Because He never gives up on you. Never. And if you are still breathing, there is still purpose. There is still hope. There is still a future. God bless you, and remember, when all seems lost, that's exactly when God begins to work in the most extraordinary way. Trust Him.